What if I told you that most of your thoughts aren't even your own? That every decision you make, every belief you hold, every reaction you have, has been carefully engineered by forces you don't even see? Sounds like a conspiracy, right? But it's not. It's just how the world really works. From the moment you were born, you've been conditioned. Your mind has been shaped by schools, media, social norms, and hidden psychological triggers designed to keep you in line. To make you obey. To make you think you're choosing, when in reality, you're just following. Ever wonder why the news is always negative? Why social media is designed to make you angry? Why companies push trends that make you feel incomplete without their products? It's not an accident. It's a system. And if you don't wake up to it, you'll spend your entire life being played, never realizing that you were never truly thinking for yourself. But today, that changes. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to teach you how to take back control of your mind, how to see the invisible strings pulling your thoughts, how to think sharper, faster, and smarter than the masses. But be warned, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you understand how the system works, you'll never fall for its tricks again. And that kind of power? That makes you dangerous. So if you're ready to stop being manipulated, if you're ready to become a person who questions, challenges, and leads, then stick around. Because what you're about to learn might just change the way you see everything. Chapter 1. The mind trap you don't even know you're in. Imagine walking into a courtroom where your own brain is on trial. The prosecution, your biases, the defense, your ego, and the judge. Well, that's supposed to be you. But let's be real. You might be the least qualified person to make an objective decision about yourself. Sounds dramatic? It should. Because every single day, you're unknowingly making decisions based on assumptions, emotions, and beliefs that might not even be yours. Your mind is a master illusionist. It convinces you that what you think is true simply because you think it. That's why arguments on social media escalate so fast. Everyone is so convinced they're right, they never stop to ask, what if I'm wrong? That's the first major crack in the foundation of weak thinking, the inability to question yourself. The moment you start asking that question, you start thinking critically. And if you don't, well, then you're trapped in a cycle of self-deception, constantly reinforcing the same beliefs without ever knowing if they're actually true. Let's make this personal. Ever had a gut feeling that someone was lying, only to find out later they were telling the truth? Or assumed a person was rude because they didn't text back, only to realize they had a family emergency? That's your brain filling in the blanks with assumptions, not facts. And the scariest part? You do this all the time. The good news? You can train your brain to stop falling for its own tricks. The real question is, do you want to? Because once you start questioning, you can never go back to blissful ignorance. And trust me, ignorance is bliss. But clarity? Clarity is power. Chapter 2. Your brain is lazy. If you're hoping your brain is this highly sophisticated, always logical supercomputer, I have bad news. Your brain is lazy. And that laziness? It's wrecking your decision-making skills. Here's the deal. Your brain doesn't want to think hard. It burns calories every time it does. That's why it looks for shortcuts, why it jumps to conclusions, why it accepts the first explanation that feels right, instead of digging deeper. It's why you might believe a well-spoken liar over a stuttering genius. It's also why you default to thinking the way you've always thought, because changing your mind is exhausting. But here's where it gets worse. Your brain isn't just lazy, it's overconfident. It assumes it knows more than it does. That's why people argue passionately about topics they barely understand. Ever notice how everyone suddenly becomes an expert on finance when the stock market crashes? Or a political analyst during elections? That's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. when people with the least knowledge overestimate their expertise. And if you think you're immune, well, that's probably the effect in action. So how do you fight a lazy, overconfident brain? Simple. You force it to work harder. The best way to do that? Ask better questions. Next time someone gives you an argument that sounds convincing, ask, what evidence do I have that this is actually true? What's the counter-argument? Am I believing this because it's comfortable or because it's accurate? Most people don't do this. Most people would rather be certain than correct. The ones who can push past that, they don't just think better, they win at life. Chapter 3. Why most people are easy to manipulate. Let's get straight to the point. Most people are ridiculously easy to manipulate. And if you think you're not, that makes you more susceptible, not less. Think about this. Have you ever watched a commercial and suddenly craved a burger, even though you weren't hungry? That's manipulation. Have you ever read a headline and immediately formed an opinion without reading the article? That's manipulation. Have you ever felt like someone was the one just because they made eye contact and smiled at you? Guess what? Manipulation. Now, before you freak out and start thinking you're a mind-controlled zombie, let's clarify something. Manipulation isn't always bad. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's just persuasion. The real danger isn't that people influence you. It's that you don't realize when it's happening. Here's how it works. Your brain is wired for cognitive ease. It prefers information that's simple, familiar, and emotionally charged. That's why headlines use fear. It's why politicians repeat slogans until they sound like absolute truth. It's why confidence often beats competence. The trick to resisting manipulation? Learn to recognize when someone is playing with your emotions. Next time you feel a strong emotional reaction, anger, fear, excitement, pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from me feeling this way? What evidence do I actually have? Would I believe this if it were presented differently? Because here's the thing. Most people don't ask these questions. They just react. And the ones who react the fastest? They're the easiest to control. The ones who think before they react? They become dangerous because they can't be played. And if you think that's powerful, wait until you learn how to use this knowledge against those who try to manipulate you. That's what we'll cover next. Chapter 4. The hidden war between emotion and logic. Ever had a moment where you knew you shouldn't do something, but did it anyway? You told yourself you'd stay calm in an argument, but the second they rolled their eyes, it was game over. You swore you wouldn't buy anything unnecessary, but somehow, that limited time sale was too good to pass up. That's because despite what we like to believe, logic doesn't run the show. Emotion does. And if you don't understand how emotions hijack your thinking, you're not making rational decisions. You're just making emotional ones that feel logical. Here's how it works. Your brain processes emotions faster than logic. That's why fear makes you jump before you've even identified what scared you. It's why anger makes you snap before you've thought through what you're about to say. Your logical brain is playing catch-up, trying to justify what your emotions already decided. And here's the worst part. Your emotions aren't always based on reality. They're influenced by past experiences, subconscious biases, and even things as random as whether you got enough sleep. That means, if you don't take a second to question them, you could be making life-altering decisions based on nothing but a mood swing. So, how do you stop your emotions from running your life? Simple. Create distance between feeling and action. When you feel a strong emotion, pause. Ask yourself, is this emotion based on facts or just my reaction? The more you question, the less control your emotions have over you. And once you master that, you become the kind of person who thinks before acting, while everyone else is just reacting. Chapter 5. The echo chamber that's controlling you. Ever notice how your social media feed seems to agree with you? How does every post, Every article, every comment section seems to confirm what you already believe. That's not a coincidence. That's an echo chamber. And if you're not careful, it can trap you in a world where you only ever see one side of the truth. Here's how it happens. Your brain loves agreement. It feels good to be right. That's why people gravitate toward news sources that match their beliefs. It's why your algorithm feeds you content that aligns with your opinions. It's why debates online rarely change minds, because most people aren't listening. They're just waiting for their turn to talk. But here's the danger. If you never expose yourself to opposing ideas, your thinking becomes weaker, not stronger. You start mistaking repetition for truth. You become more confident, but less informed. And that makes you easy to manipulate. The solution? Break your own echo chamber. Read sources that challenge your beliefs. Follow people you disagree with. Force yourself to consider the other side, not to change your mind, but to sharpen it. Because the strongest thinkers aren't the ones who cling to their ideas. They're the ones who test them constantly. Chapter 6. The Power of Asking the Right Questions. Imagine you're in a detective movie interrogating a suspect. You don't just ask, "Did you do it?" Because obviously, they'll say no. You dig deeper. You ask questions that reveal what they're trying to hide. That's how critical thinking works. It's not about having the right answers. It's about asking the right questions. Most people ask weak questions. Is this true? Is a weak question, because if you already want to believe something, you'll find a way to justify it. A stronger question? What evidence would prove me wrong? That forces your brain to consider the possibility that you are wrong. And that makes your thinking stronger. Here's another one. Instead of asking, "Do I like this idea?" ask, "Who benefits from me believing this?" Because guess what? If an idea is being pushed hard by media, by businesses, by influencers, there's probably someone making money or gaining power from it. And once you see that, you stop being easy to fool. But here's the real game changer. If you want to level up your thinking fast, start asking, "How do I know this?" Most people can't answer that. They repeat what they've heard, what feels right, what aligns with their beliefs. But when you start asking why you believe what you do, you force yourself to think deeper. And thinking deeper, that's what separates people who know from people who just believe. Chapter 7. How your brain tricks you into believing lies. Ever been absolutely sure about something, only to later find out you were completely wrong? Maybe you swore you locked the door, but it was wide open when you got back. Maybe you vividly remember a conversation, but the other person says it never happened. Or maybe you've believed in a fact for years, only to discover it was total nonsense. That's because your brain isn't a perfect recording device. It edits reality. It fills in gaps. It distorts memories to fit your current beliefs. And worst of all, it does all of this without telling you. Here's one of the biggest ways your brain lies to you. Confirmation bias. This is the tendency to notice and remember information that supports what you already believe, and to ignore or dismiss anything that contradicts it. Ever notice how, when you're convinced something is true, you start seeing proof of it everywhere? That's not reality shifting. It's just your brain filtering information to fit your existing worldview. Then there's the illusion of truth effect. If you hear a lie often enough, your brain starts treating it as truth, even if you know it was false at first. That's why propaganda works. It's why misinformation spreads so easily. And it's why most people hold on to beliefs that are based more on repetition than on actual facts. So, how do you fight back? You have to actively question everything, especially the things you're most sure of. Whenever you catch yourself saying, "I just know this is true," ask yourself, do I know it? Or do I just feel like I know it? Dig into the sources. Check for opposing views. The moment you stop blindly trusting your thoughts, is the moment you start truly thinking. Chapter 8. Why Smart People Make Dumb Decisions. Think intelligence protects you from bad decisions? Think again. Some of the worst decisions in history, business failures, political disasters, financial crashes, were made by highly intelligent people. Why? Because intelligence alone doesn't guarantee good thinking. In fact, sometimes it hurts it. Here's how it happens. Intelligent people are usually better at arguing their point, but that doesn't mean their point is right. It just means they can rationalize bad decisions more convincingly. If they want something to be true, they'll find ways to justify it, even if the logic is shaky. Then there's overconfidence bias. The smarter someone is, the more likely they are to trust their own judgment, even when they shouldn't. They assume they must be right because they've been right so many times before. But that's exactly how they get blindsided. The best thinkers aren't the ones who always believe they're right. They're the ones who constantly test their ideas. And let's not forget emotional reasoning. No matter how smart you are, if an idea feels right, your brain wants to believe it. That's why even geniuses can fall for scams, bad investments, or toxic relationships. Their brain isn't analyzing the facts. It's just finding ways to support what it wants to be true. The solution? Stay humble. No matter how smart you are, assume you're missing something. Play devil's advocate against your own beliefs. Seek out criticism, not just praise. Because the moment you think you're too smart to make bad decisions, that's the moment you start making them. Chapter 9. The Illusion of Free Thinking. You like to think you're a free thinker, right? That your opinions are yours, shaped by reason and evidence? But what if I told you that most of what you believe, your opinions, your values, even your sense of self, has been given to you? That the way you see the world isn't actually based on independent thinking, but on programming you've absorbed your entire life? Sounds crazy, right? But let's break it down. From the moment you were born, you've been surrounded by influences shaping your mind. Your parents, your culture, your education, the media you consume. If you grew up in a different country, you'd probably have completely different opinions on politics, religion, or success. If you were raised in a different household, you'd likely have different fears, values, and habits. So, how much of your thinking is truly yours? Here's an even scarier thought. Society doesn't want you to think critically. Governments, corporations, and media outlets all benefit when people follow the herd instead of questioning things. Why? Because independent thinkers are harder to control. They don't just accept authority, they challenge it. They don't just follow trends, they question why those trends exist. They don't just consume information, they analyze it. So if you want to truly think for yourself, you have to start by questioning where your beliefs come from. Ask yourself, do I believe this because I've researched it, or just because it's what I've always been told? Start breaking down your own mental programming, because once you do that, you stop being a puppet, and that's when you start actually thinking for yourself. Chapter 10. The Trap of Emotional Thinking. Ever made a decision in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later? Maybe you sent a text you shouldn't have. Maybe you quit something too soon. Maybe you let your emotions push you into a bad choice that logic would have never approved. That's because emotions are powerful. They override rational thinking. When you're angry, scared, or excited, your brain takes shortcuts. It stops analyzing and starts reacting. And in those moments, you think you're making a rational choice, but in reality, you're just being controlled by emotion. Think about how fear drives people to avoid opportunities, how excitement makes them ignore red flags, how anger convinces them they're right, even when they're completely wrong. Emotions don't care about logic. They care about feeling good in the moment. But critical thinking isn't about what feels right. It's about what is right. So how do you stop emotions from hijacking your thinking? Simple. Pause. Before making any big decision, step back. Let the emotions settle. Ask yourself, if I were completely calm, would I still make this choice? If the answer is no, then you know the emotion is driving the decision, not logic. And here's the real kicker. Emotions aren't the enemy. They're just unreliable narrators. The trick isn't to suppress them. It's to recognize when they're steering the wheel and take back control before they drive you off a cliff. Chapter 11. The Cost of Being a Passive Thinker. Most people think they're thinking, but in reality, they're just reacting. They consume information without questioning it. They accept opinions without analyzing them. They let the world tell them what to think, without even realizing it. And that's exactly what society wants. Passive thinkers are easy to control. They buy into trends without questioning them. They follow rules without asking if they make sense. They accept whatever they're told because thinking for themselves is just too much work. But here's the dangerous part. Passive thinking isn't just about being uninformed. It's about being manipulated. Every single day, you're bombarded with messages designed to shape your thoughts. Advertisers want you to believe you need their product. Politicians want you to believe their version of the truth. Social media algorithms want you to think exactly like the people around you. And if you're not actively questioning what you consume, you're being programmed without even knowing it. The cost? You lose control over your own mind. You stop thinking for yourself. You let others decide your beliefs, your opinions, and even your choices. But the second you wake up, the second you start questioning everything, you take that power back. Because critical thinkers don't just accept information. They challenge it. They analyze it. They decide for themselves. And that's what makes them dangerous to anyone who benefits from a passive, obedient society. Chapter 12. Breaking Free from Mental Shortcuts. Your brain is lazy. No offense, but it is. It constantly looks for shortcuts to save energy. And while that's great for basic survival, it's terrible for critical thinking. Take stereotypes, for example. They exist because your brain wants to categorize things quickly. It doesn't want to analyze every single person, situation, or idea from scratch. So instead, it takes the easy route. It generalizes. It assumes. It jumps to conclusions. And that's where problems start. Then there's heuristics, mental shortcuts that help you make decisions quickly. Sounds useful, right? Except these shortcuts often lead to terrible choices. Like assuming someone is right just because they're confident. Like trusting information just because it comes from an authority figure. Like making decisions based on gut feelings rather than actual evidence. The problem is, your brain loves these shortcuts. It makes you feel like you're thinking, but really, you're just relying on pre-programmed habits. So how do you break free? Start by questioning your automatic reactions. Whenever you catch yourself making a snap judgment, pause. Ask yourself, am I thinking or am I just assuming? Challenge your first impression. Force your brain to take the longer, harder path, the one that actually leads to truth. Because at the end of the day, real thinking isn't fast. It's slow, messy, and uncomfortable. But it's also the only way to see reality clearly. And once you start doing that, you stop being another person running on autopilot and start actually thinking for yourself. Chapter 13. The Lies Your Brain Tells You. Your brain is a liar. It twists reality, filters out inconvenient facts, and rewrites history to make you feel better. It tells you you're right, even when you're dead wrong. It convinces you that what you want to be true must be true. Ever noticed how, after an argument, your brain conveniently remembers only the things that make you look good? Or how, when you make a mistake, your brain immediately finds excuses instead of admitting fault? That's not an accident. That's your mind protecting you. It hates being wrong. It hates discomfort. So instead of facing the truth, It rewrites it. This is called confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and believe information that supports what you already think while ignoring anything that challenges it. It's why people get stuck in echo chambers. It's why conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. It's why even the smartest people can believe the dumbest things. And here's the scary part. The smarter you are, the worse this can be. Because intelligence doesn't necessarily make you more rational. It just makes you better at defending your own biases. So how do you escape this mental trap? Simple. Seek discomfort. Look for evidence that you're wrong. Challenge your own beliefs like you're trying to disprove them. Because the truth isn't found in what makes you feel good. It's found in what makes you uncomfortable. Chapter 14. Why most people are easily manipulated. Think you're immune to manipulation? Think again. Every single day, someone is hacking your mind. Advertisers, politicians, influencers, the media. And if you are not actively resisting it, you're being controlled without even realizing it. Take social media, for example. You think you're casually scrolling, but every post you see is carefully selected to manipulate you. The algorithm knows what makes you angry. It knows what makes you click. It knows how to keep you hooked for hours. And the scariest part? It's not even personal. It's just business. Then there's the news. They don't report stories based on importance. They report what will get the strongest reaction. Fear, outrage, division. Because emotional people are easier to control. If you're scared, you're desperate for solutions. If you're angry, you're looking for someone to blame. And in both cases, you're more likely to act without thinking. So how do you fight back? Start by recognizing when you're being emotionally triggered. Whenever you feel an intense emotional reaction, rage, fear, excitement, pause. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Who benefits from my reaction? The moment you become aware of manipulation, it loses its power over you. And in a world that profits from keeping you blind, the most dangerous thing you can do is see clearly. Chapter 15. The hidden power of asking better questions. Most people don't think critically because they don't know how to ask the right questions. They accept information at face value. They assume what they hear must be true, and they never stop to dig deeper. But every great thinker, every innovator, every genius throughout history had one thing in common. They questioned everything. Why is this the truth? Who benefits from this idea? What's the evidence against this? How could I be wrong? These aren't just random questions. They are weapons. They force reality to reveal itself. They cut through lies, illusions, and manipulations. Look at history. Every major breakthrough, every revolution, every shift in human progress started with a single question. What if we're wrong? But most people are afraid to ask these questions. They don't want to challenge authority. They don't want to feel stupid. They don't want to admit they might be wrong. So they stay silent. They accept. They obey, not you, not anymore. If you want to master critical thinking, you have to make questioning a habit. Whenever you hear something, whether it's from the news, a friend, or even your own thoughts, don't just accept it. Interrogate it. Because the truth doesn't come from blindly believing what you're told. It comes from daring to ask what no one else will. Conclusion. You've just unlocked a secret most people will never even realize. Your mind is both your greatest weapon and your biggest enemy. Every day, you're surrounded by manipulation, bias, and misinformation. But now, you know the traps. You see the illusions. And that puts you ahead of 99% of people. Critical thinking isn't just a skill. It's a survival tool. It's what separates those who follow from those who lead, those who get played from those who win the game. And now, you're one of the few who can see through the noise. But here's the real question. What will you do with this power? Will you start questioning everything? Will you challenge your own beliefs? Will you refuse to be manipulated? Because knowing isn't enough. Action is what makes the difference. If you're ready to take your thinking to the next level, there's more to explore. Watch our next video on how to destroy mental biases and make smarter decisions faster. Because in a world full of distractions and deception, only the sharpest minds truly thrive.